Hi guys, it's Phil
And Liam
from Die Hard on a Blank, and we're excited to talk to you about a brand new podcast we're launching called 48 Hours of Buddy Movies.
That's right, folks. 48-hour-long
approximately
episodes exploring 48 different buddy movies, beginning with the original classic that started it all, Walter Hill's 1982 masterpiece, 48 Hours, starring Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy.
And just like Die Hard on a Blank, our new show will explore the influence of 48 Hours on the action genre, one buddy movie at a time.
We'll be covering iconic franchises such as the Beverly Hills Cop movies, the Stakeout movies, the Bad Boys movies, classics of the genre like Running Scared,
Hyams Hive Rise Up,
Midnight Run, Red Heat, Tango and Cash, The Hard Way,
plus tough thrillers such as To Live and Die in LA, Black Rain, Point Break, Training Day, and The Way of the Gun.
as well as a few wild cards that you might not expect, such as RoboCop, Alien Nation, and, of course, Phil's favorite,
Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
So, if you're a fan of two buddies talking buddy movies,
Then 48 Hours of Buddy Movies is for you.
visit patreon.com/48 hours of buddy movies to subscribe for the price of 1 cup of coffee a month.
See you in the squad car.
Or walking to the squad car, mildly irritated that we've been paired off.
Wherever. That's patreon.com/48 hours of buddy movies to subscribe. Welcome to Die Hard on a Blank, the podcast where we explore the influence of Die Hard on action cinema, one action movie at a time. I'm Philip Gawthorne, and with me as always is Liam Billingham, and today's film is The Taking of Pelham123.
It's Die Hard on the New York City subway.
Oh boy, we just had a very long...
boy. I wanted to listen. Here's what I wanted to do it like John Travolta in this movie, so it'll be like it's Die Hard. Like I really wanted to
really
just
bring the energy.
Yeah. In my fucking bunghole. Like what are you talking about? Why are you saying bunghole?
I love that. I thought he was saying bumhole, so I thought it was a Britishism.
Bunghole.
It was bung.
Bunghole.
Oh,
Yes.
so it's like a prison thing.
It's like a Beavis and Buttheadism.
Yeah, it's like a Beavis.
Cornholio.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, as you see, we've set the tone very high for today's discussion and bringing in a
the guest
prestigious
is already
New York
got
author.
the dialogue going, so we're good.
We're bringing back the three-peating Jason Bailey. Welcome back, Jason.
I mean, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for having me. First and foremost, how many of us are there in the Three Timers Club? Because I'm starting to feel about it like kind of like the Five Timers Club of SNL hosts.
It's a small number.
If I remember correctly,
Group. Yes.
Bill Gaibiri,
Bilger,
Of course.
Chris Tapley,
Chris Tapley,
certainly,
and Rob
Hackett. Yeah.
Rob Hackett. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Elite.
So,
I appreciated the smoking jacket that you guys sent over. It fit like a glove. And the part of the, I mean, I'm thrilled to be here, obviously. You know my love of the show. But really and truly, as an author, when you have an opportunity to promote a book, that's great. When you have an opportunity to promote 2 books, that's like a miracle. Today, I'm promoting 3 different books.
Oh, wow.
Now, one of them will not be out for a year, but you fuckers are closing down the podcast, and I won't be able to come on and promote it then.
Listen, we didn't want you coming back for like that Jennifer Lopez honeymoon movie to promote your book, okay? We had to be strategic about this.
That was very merciful of you. Thank you, yes.
But you are the author of Gandolfini and... Oh, hold it up. And
Gandolfini, Jim Tony and the Life of a Legend.
Oh, my copy's upstairs.
Nice.
Damn it.
Nice.
I should have held mine up. And then Fun Time Cinema, New York City, and the movies that made it, which is, for you guys to know, that is my coffee table book.
So there you go.
That book and Adam Naiman's Paul Thomas Anderson books are the books that confront people sitting at my
good
at the
company.
table in
So
my
yeah,
home.
so we're talking about New York movies. We're talking about a movie with Gandolfini in it, and my next book, Yippee-Ki-Yay, is a detailed history of Die Hard in particular, and Die Hard's influence in our culture, and so forth and so on, if you can imagine such a topic. And that will be out in 2027. So
How
really,
many blown away references are going to be in the book? What are we looking?
There may be none. I'm afraid there may be.
This is what happens when I don't get to edit the book.
But I did, because like I said, I'm promoting it now for people who listen to the show. I interviewed both of the hosts of this fine program to talk about Die Hard's importance, influence, and there is an entire chapter on the Die Hard on a blank subgenre.
Oh, great.
In which they are, of course, prominently featured and quoted.
Oh, that's so exciting.
It's going to be, I finished the second draft last week. I'm really happy with the book. I think it's going to be good.
Do you
I
have
think
an
we'll
exact
probably read
release date?
No, we're going back
Okay.
and forth on that. It
Gotcha.
will either be summer or fall of 27.
Okay, great.
That's kind of where we're sort of trying to be strategic about what release date makes the most sense, and to also then tie into the following summer, the 40th anniversary of the release of Die Hard, if you can believe how old we all are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, look out for that,
2028,
everybody.
okay, yeah.
So the book is going to be called Yippee-Ki-Yay
It is. It is
by
indeed.
Jason Bailey. So look out for that. Mark your calendars now. But today we are going to talk about this film, which is right in your sweet spot of your interests. New York City, kind of cult cinema, 70s cinema. Obviously, we're talking predominantly about the 2009 version.
Sure.
And of course, Die Hard and Die Hard on a Blank. So where does your relationship with this film begin, or I guess the series of films? Because technically there's three. Can you walk us back to, or were you familiar with the book, or tell us how you intersected with this one?
When I was, I want to say about 12, I was going through a Walter Matthau phase because I was
Hell yeah, brother.
incredibly popular in junior high school.
Hopscotch heads rise up.
You joke. That was the entry point. Hopscotch is one of my dad's favorite movies.
Deep cut there.
We watched it on the NBC like Sunday night movie and taped it. And I was like, who is this guy? He's incredible. And so then I start watching the comedies and Bad News Bears and Little Miss Odd Couple and all of that stuff. And then I found out about this weird pocket in his career in 73 and 74 where back to back he makes three mostly serious crime movies. He's in this, and then before this, in 73, he had done Don Siegel's Charlie Varick, which I don't know if you guys have seen Charlie fucking Varick, but
I like Charlie Varick.
Oh, that's a good, tough
Phil,
crime
you would
movie.
like Charlie Varick. Yeah,
You would
should
love
watch
it.
that. Yeah.
And then a cop movie called The Laughing Policeman, which is not as good as these two, but still good.
I like. It's not it, but it is enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was going through this Matthau phase, and this movie aired on A&E at like 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night after my bedtime. So I taped it and I watched it the next day, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with everything about it. And really, this was around the same time that I saw Taxi Driver for the first time as well. So this really is like the origin point for my love of New York cinema. And for being a kid in Wichita, Kansas, watching movies about New York in the 1970s and it feeling like science fiction. It's just completely different, but something I want to go to there. Now, the B side of that is that, then it becomes one of my favorite movies. I watch it over and over the years. I'm recommending it to people, so forth and so on. When it first came out on Blu-ray from KL Studio Classics, there's a tremendous audio commentary on it by Jim and Pat Healy.
I'm so excited to check this out.
I have the Blu-ray. I haven't listened to that commentary. I ran out of time. I did rewatch the movie, but I love their releases.
They're so good together.
Yeah.
And there is a point in that commentary, I'm not making this up, where they say they're having this conversation about this period in New York movie making, and they say, I can't remember which of them says, it's really there's all of these really great, they're kind of like fun city movies. And they, and they start listing all of these titles, and that was sort of the beginning of I should write a book about that became this book. So there's a direct line from this movie to that. So I love this movie. I evangelize about this movie. Whenever it shows in New York at revival houses, which is pretty frequently, I always go. It always gets a huge response. What do they want for their lousy 35 cents to live forever? Always gets a huge laugh. It really truly is like one of, sort of my favorite.
Fucking amazing.
It really is.
Is the Subway not 35 cents anymore? Did they change that? No,
it is not.
Okay.
It's $3 now. They just made the leap a couple months back to $3. Yes, but
congratulations.
Still, what are you going to do for your $3? Live forever?
Ron's New York.
There you go.
So the remake, though, then, there's there's two remakes. We're predominantly talking about the 2009 Tony Scott movie. Of course, but we would be remiss to not discuss the original 70s version. But there's also a TV movie, which we will touch on. I don't want to talk about it too much now. But then, as such a fan of the original, what was your relationship with the remake, and how did you kind of feel about it as someone that probably held it pretty close to your heart, it sounds like?
I went to see it opening weekend. Very excited about it because, big Tony Scott person. I don't love all of his movies from this period, but most of them. Love Denzel, obviously. I was into Gandolfini by then. Travolta, it can be hit and miss, but, I was very excited about it. And on that first viewing, I did not like it, which I will fully own is, I don't want to open the whole can of worms of like remakes and how we respond to them and why do you do a remake and all of that sort of stuff. But it really was just a matter of like, I felt veered so far from what I liked about the original that I had seen 30 times in my life by then that I had a very hard time taking it on its own terms.
Okay.
I revisited it for the Gandolfini book. Liked it a little more with that distance and with it also, sort of my opinion of it sharpened. And then I was like, oh, wait, I like this more than I remembered. And then when I watched it this last weekend, for today, I've come to like I'm about 3 stars on it. I'm like, it's like a 3 out of 5 for me now. So okay. I'm warming up to it. There are certain things about it that there are certain we'll get into all this, obviously. There are certain changes that I dislike. There are certain changes that I do like, and things that they adjust and tweak that I think are sort of interesting. Some work, some don't, but they're all sort of speak to, I think, the really specific challenge that Tony Scott, but also Brian Helgeland in writing that script were facing. Which again we'll break into, but the point is I'm softening on it.
Okay,
I'm coming around on it.
We'll get into the remake stuff as well because it is very interesting. It's also interesting to think about that this is Tony's second remake of that decade because Man on Fire is also a remake. Of a less well-regarded,
much less known,
film, of course.
But still,
Liam, tell us, were you on board with the original and across it?
My dad loved Walter Matthau, so I was like raised
that
on.
Scans.
Raised on. It totally does. Grumpy Old Men. And kind of like saw all those movies and definitely some of his like earlier work. And then I do remember really clearly, probably when I was 12, him being like, we're watching The Taking of Pelham 123. And him being like, that was one of those ones where he was like, well, sometimes dads like reveal this thing to you where they're like, well, this is the movie, right? And then so you go and you rent it, and like this was one of those movies where he's like, if you haven't seen, he was like, you haven't seen this one? It's hilarious how they'd be like, you haven't seen this one? You're like, no, I'm 12.
Who would have shown me this?
Sort it out.
You.
How am I gonna have seen this? So he showed it to me, and I remember really liking it, but I hadn't seen it until I revisited it last week in like that maybe once or twice. I don't think I ever saw it in the city. It's amazing. In this rewatch, it reminded me of like a Jean-Pierre Melville, but like an American version of that, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, that's a good connection.
Like just kind of like kind of in the way that I kind of think of The Graduate as like American Antonioni. I was like, this is like American Melville, which is really a huge recommendation for this movie because the original is really great. The remake I only saw for the first time like during COVID.
Oh,
so and I think probably similar to you, Jason. At first I was like, hey, Travolta's really just gnawing on everything around him in this movie. And then I watched it again this weekend. I liked it a little more, and I think there's so much about it that's really, really interesting. And then I did manage to catch like maybe 30 minutes of Tony's commentary track on the Blu-ray.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which sort of like elucidated some things for me. I think it's nowhere near as successful as the original, but I do think they're like really interesting comparison points. And also like you could watch that first one, you could watch the remake and be like, wow, this I can understand in these two movies how New York City is a different place.
Yeah, it's very useful for that purpose.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah. So where would you, if I could press you for a rating, because I think it's kind of interesting to see, because if Jason said he's moved up to a 3 over the years, what would you give it out of 5 stars?
I'm at like a 4 on Letterboxd, I think. I think I like very comfortably gave it 4, whereas the 74 is like 4.5. 4.5 for me. Almost perfect movie.
What would it take to close that half star, Liam Billingham? What do you want out of a movie?
Really what it is, and I don't mean to sound like, Captain 2026, is that the Japanese stuff just goes on for way too long for me.
It does, but what I love about
the reveal
that stuff
is hilarious.
The reveal. The reveal is
amazing.
So good, because you think, especially for a 74 movie, like they're doing one thing and then they kind of pull the rug on you, and I do
totally.
Like that. But I see I see that.
But it's like such a small thing, but I just found myself sort of weighing on that a little bit. I think this movie has like quite a lot to say about the city of, both of them have quite a lot to say about the city of New York. And I think the way that the 74 communicates those things is like masterful. It's crazy how much a gesture or a word will tell you about the characters in the city that you're in.
Yeah. Well, and I love your comparison to Melville, which I would have never made on my own, but like especially the way that I love a movie that parachutes in at the last possible second. Like the fact that we don't need to see, and wisely Helgeland and Scott replicate this, we don't need to see these guys meeting. We don't need to see them planning. Yeah. We don't need to see them with blueprints. The fact that we just start when they start the job is, I love that stuff.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And even I would say, we'll get into this, the 2009 goes too far with backstory in my mind, which is one of the great shortcomings, I think, of the movie. But we can talk about that. But that's because like sometimes when you watch a movie that's a remake of a movie that you love so much, you're like, I just want it to be the original.
Right, right. Well, and I'll tell you what's helpful for that, though, is that in the interim between these the revisiting the 74, which of course I did because I'll take any opportunity, and rewatching the 2009 last weekend, in between them, I finally watched the 98 TV movie for the first time. It had been like on my sort of like to watch list forever, but for a long time it was very hard to see. Now it's like on Prime, you can go watch it. And I actually, the 2009 came out looking better for me personally, because it is a much more slavish remake, sort of beat for beat and sometimes even line for line remake, and that doesn't work. Like
the 98 version, you're saying?
Yes,
the TV movie version.
The TV movie version, which stars Edward James Olmos, Lorraine Bracco, Vincent D'Onofrio as Mr. Blue.
What a cast.
It's a good cast.
Donnie Wahlberg,
and Richard Schiff in the Martin Balsam role. Now, let me tell you something. Whatever does or doesn't work about that movie, anytime they remake a movie that had Martin Balsam in it, they should get Richard Schiff to do it, because his is my favorite performance in that movie. He is absolutely perfect, but it is really tight to the first one and isn't successful.
To the point that it's like, what was the point?
Yes, exactly.
To the point, it was the year of the pointless remake, because it was also the year of Gus Van Sant's Psycho, as I recall.
Yes.
Like the shot for shot. We'll get into the remake stuff of like, I think because it raises an interesting question, right? Of like, what makes a successful remake, I think is actually going to be a very interesting discussion. But I want to stick a pin in it just because we need to kind of crack on with our other...
we got a format
We've got a rigid format to fit. We're on a schedule here, guys.
That's right.
Much like the characters in this film.
There we go.
So
you're like, you can't live forever listening to podcasts.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say,
check.
Exactly. Check me. If we don't keep going, I'm going to shoot a hostage.
Phil,
if we don't hit fast facts, I'm going to shoot a hostage.
We're in 3 different cities. I don't know what you want.
I just wanted to say, like, and I'll keep it concise. That because my relationship with it is kind of inverted, because I saw the 2009 version first.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
So which put me in a very different head because I was like, this movie's fantastic.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's very much up my alley. I love the look of the film. It's filled with actors I love. Obviously, the two leads plus a great supporting cast.
Great.
Tony shooting the shit out of it. I could watch that movie in the sort of the dispatch center with the sound off. The colors are so beautiful, and I just love the look of it. And then when actually we started this project was my push to watch the original Taking of Pelham 123 because I kind of wanted to watch all the movies that were the antecedents of Die Hard.
Yep.
And I remember this very distinctly because there were two movies I watched in quick succession, both from an almost identical era, Taking of Pelham 123 and Towering Inferno.
Yep.
And I remember I was like, wow, Towering Inferno is so lame. Like it is such a dated,
I still never seen it.
Kind of corny.
It's just a wet rag of a movie.
It's so long. It's so kind of like self-righteous and in your face, and just such a dated style of filmmaking that like reeks of the bad side of the 70s in general. Not so much in cinema. In general, the kind of like fashions, everything about it is just like, oh, this is so. It's actually quite tedious to watch. Don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously, it's an important film with great actors and everything. But then I watched Taking of Pelham 123, and I was like, gosh, this film is so hip. This film is so cool. Like, it is still cool now. And I thought that was very interesting because there's something about, there's certain films that can feel very dated. And it is very much like it is a time capsule of New York City in that era. But there's something about the pulse and the vibe of that film that feels so kind of young, cool, current and timeless. French Connection, I think, is somewhat of the same way.
Oh, totally.
But it's interesting how certain films from an era can just date horribly, and other films just feel timelessly cool. You know. So for me, when I watched the original, I was like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. This is just one of the coolest movies I've ever seen. I absolutely loved it. I bought it immediately. So it makes for an interesting discussion. So I kind of do love the 2009. I would say that for me, I'm like 4 stars on the 2009 version and 5 stars on the original. That's kind of where I land. But we'll get into some of the remake stuff and the New York City stuff in more detail for sure. I just want to get the fast facts on the rails. So this film was directed by Tony Scott, screenplay by Brian Helgeland, although David Koepp delivered a early version of the movie. Which
there's some Koepp flavor to this. There's some Koepp. He's I think an unsung New York screenwriter. The Paper is a great New York movie. Spider-Man is a great New York movie. And oh god, it's such a generic title. I'm afraid I'll fuck it up. Premium Rush.
Oh yeah,
the Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
That's on the long list. Unfortunately, we're not going to do it because
the Bike Messenger movie.
Walked away from this to direct that. I think he was working on this, and then
because
on the
Die Hard on a bicycle.
Yes, exactly.
Tony is like Helgeland was writing it, and then he had to go away for a directing assignment, and then we got Koepp, and then Koepp had to go away to direct the movie. I think it would have been Premium Rush.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So it is, of course, based on The Taking of Pelham 123, the 1973 novel by John Gotti, which is actually a pen name.
It is.
Stars Denzel Washington, John Travolta, John Turturro, Luis Guzman, Michael Rispoli, James Gandolfini, many more. Distributed by Sony on June 12th, 2009. The estimated budget is 100 to 110 million. The box office was 150.2 million. Another example of a film I think similar to Deja Vu, where it's like Tony Scott makes a film that makes a $40 million profit and people are like, that was disappointing.
Right.
Totally.
Right.
What is it going to take for people to be happy?
This is the drawback of Top Gun coming at the beginning of your career.
Yeah, exactly. They want everything to be like that.
Plus all the money he made on the phenomenon.
But let's talk about. Let's move into a section of why we're discussing it on this show, even though it's blatantly obvious. in a segment that we like to call
Die Hard DNA.
Wow. I'm going to take the rest of the day off.
All right. So now what I think is so interesting about this as well, as we kind of move towards the end of this project in this podcast is that now things are starting to come full circle, because you have the original Taking of Pelham 123 novel and film likely being a major influence on potentially the book and the film.
No doubt about it.
Die
no
Hard,
doubt about
right?
it. Yeah, like I was never able to find anything where Roderick Thorpe pinpointed it specifically as an influence, but he famously saw Towering Inferno,
Right.
and it inspired the book. And specifically because he had written The Detective, the first book with this character. It had been a huge hit. It sold to the movies. It made a bunch of money. His couple of novels after that didn't do nearly as well. And so he was specifically looking for a book that could be turned into a movie, and was going to the movies a lot.
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned, these two movies, I had occasion for our podcast to look at release dates recently. Taking Pelham 123 came out like 2 months before Towering Inferno.
Mm-hmm.
So this is right in the pocket where he's going to movies looking for inspiration.
It makes sense. I mean,
he totally saw this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. And even more, I think, like the version of Gruber in the book is, I think, closer to Mr. Blue than, Hans Gruber became in the movie. There are a lot of little things like that sort of got lost in translation.
Anton Gruber, the Red.
Right.
There's a huge amount of Mr.
Yeah.
Blue DNA in
Yes.
Gruber. Like,
big time.
But it's just interesting that now we have this interesting, the family tree that I've always has been an interesting thing for me, is tracing this kind of genealogy, and how now things kind of come full circle, because that influences Die Hard influences all these other films, and then Die Hard influences the 2009 remake, which was, you know what I mean? Everything's kind of like feeding off itself. It very much meets the Die Hard definition, of course. Bad guys take over a blank. It's up to one person or small group to fight back. Here we have a group of ruthless terror thieves taking over a train on the New York subway, and it becomes up to one guy, MTA dispatcher Walter Garber, played by Denzel Washington in this iteration, to fight back. The events, of course, focus on a single event over the course of a single day in a confined location.
Almost in real time.
Yep, pretty much. Mm-hmm. Not quite, because actually Tony talks about it on the commentary. They considered actually making it real time, but for some reason it didn't. Maybe
he watched Nick of Time.
Exactly. I was like, you kind of box yourself into a corner.
No,
a real time movie that has a dream sequence for 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, you don't have the ability to fix, like, you can only do so much in editing.
It boxes you into a corner.
It's like a storytelling.
So it's a bit of a rod on your back, actually.
Totally.
Despite the best efforts of the authorities, ultimately it becomes up to this one ordinary man to resolve the crisis at tremendous risk and personal sacrifice. I think it's interesting as well, and we'll talk about this, how the police and the feds can only do so much, and at times the police and authorities are, again, much like I think the original movie and Die Hard, the original Die Hard, they are portrayed as inept and even buffoonish at times. I think the car crash in particular, obviously that's in the original too. There's something about they're more
buffoonish. NYPD is way more incompetent in the 09 version than they were in the 74.
The other thing is that it's a Tony Scott movie, so the car flips over 45 times as opposed to like one time.
He's like, I got one action beat. I'm putting everything into it.
Should the car flip over more times? What did you fucking say, Tony? I said more times. Okay.
The hero and the villain are rarely in the same physical space, but have a couple of powerful scenes together where they face off, including a mano-a-mano final showdown. The villain, I think, is very similar in this iteration, not so much in the 70s iteration. The villain has this. He's highly intelligent in both versions, but in this version, he has a strong understanding of international finance, and his business acumen is integral to his ultimate master plan, a la Gruber. And another Gruber connection that was more of a more subtle one is that he speaks admiringly about another character's suit. At one point, Ryder, the Travolta character, compliments the mayor's beautiful suit. So much like Gruber, he is aware of
good catch.
Aesthetics, materialism, what that says about your status. He probably knows the value of that suit, much like Gruber knew it's a John Phillips, etc., etc. Yeah. So there's some cool details there. And then the final thing, and this we'll talk about this again in more detail, but the New York sensibility and attitude of the movie. New York attitude being a key part of the original Die Hard series. Of course, in the original film, you have this smart-mouthed working-class NYPD detective, John McClane, being a fish out of water in this affluent world of corporate LA. And Die Hard with a Vengeance, he's on home turf. If you want to do the City Hall line, Liam, please
It's Christmas. You could steal City Hall.
Hear that kind of wise ass, tough talking New York
Yeah.
sensibility is writ large, I think, throughout the movie. So those were the things that I caught. But if there's anything that you want to add, then please throw it into the pot.
No, I mean, the main thing that really jumped out at me this time, looking at it more through a specifically Die Hard lens, was the thing that you pinpointed that they added, so that does feel like Die Hard's influence on this, which is that it's a hostage situation that turns out to being the cover for a heist. Like, that's nowhere in the book. That's nowhere in the original film. That's very much their invention and is so Die Hard coded. Yeah.
The only thing I'll add is that there's a moment towards the beginning of the movie where Luis Guzman is walking towards the back of the train, and one of the guys who he's working with cuts him off, and he says, "Not right now."
Oh yeah,
and it kind of mirrors the like brotherly antagonism between I forget their names in the
Tony
and Marco.
Carl.
Not Marco.
Carl,
Marco. How
right?
could I do that?
Tony and Carl.
Tony and Paul. Yeah, Carl. Exactly.
When
So
he's
there's like a
messing with
little
him
bit
with
of like
the phone stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a little bit of
That's a
very
great
smart
pull.
kind of like, like what's the, because I rewatched that sequence twice.
That's a good shout. Well, let's dig into all of this in real detail after this quick break. And we're back.
How was your break?
I'm preparing for when we do our last episode.
You'll finally have an answer.
I have an
my
answer.
hope.
Great
I'm
Here's
going
my
to
hope.
do it on the. I'm doing it on the last.
Here's my
episode.
hope is that like you're like, oh, we're back, and you say, how was your break? And the doorbell goes off really hard, and I open the door, and it's someone just punches me in the face, and that's the end.
Well, now that maybe I'll rethink my
It's just hard to time
rejoinder.
that out properly.
All right, we are back into our main section of the show where we explore the tenets
We live in a Twilight world.
There are no friends of dusk.
of an action motion picture, starting with the premise. Okay, so I'm going to read this one out just to set the table for anyone unfamiliar with this film, for shame. Okay. When a ruthless, why am I struggling to say that? When a ruthless thief, that's why, who calls himself Ryder, played by John Travolta, takes over a New York City subway train and demands a $10 million ransom for the hostages, disgraced MTA official Walter Garber, Denzel Washington, finds himself in the middle of the crisis when he happens to pick up the initial radio call. Garber must now somehow attempt to negotiate his way through this high-stakes situation, which soon becomes even more perilous and political when a suspicious NYPD hostage negotiator, played by John Turturro, and the slippery mayor of New York, played by James Gandolfini, both get personally involved. As the body count rises and tensions increase, Garber finds himself drawn into a strange, almost symbiotic relationship with the unhinged hijacker, and ultimately has to go into the lion's den himself to confront him personally. Okay, simpler version of that, obviously, like terror thieves take over a train, demand a ransom from the city. Okay, so I'm going to start. I have my own thoughts, but I'm going to, we would be remiss to not take advantage of your presence, Jason. So what do you think this movie is about?
That's my third time on. You'd think I'd prepared this answer by then.
No, figure it out on live like I do every single week.
I mean, it is about city gridlock in multiple ways. It is about literal gridlock. It is about metaphorical gridlock. It is about sort of the big steaming, grinding machine that is New York City, and the degree to which this, like a sort of single event, can grind all of those gears to an absolute halt. I think it is also, though, and now I'm sorry, I'm going to get a little highfalutin. What I've always loved about the franchise, if you will, of Taking of Pelham 123 is how it is essentially about what a beautiful thing the New York City subway is.
Mm-hmm.
That the thing that I love, especially about the original, but there certainly is this flavor in the remake as well, is when you're on the train, anybody could get on that train. Like, what I love about it, and the way in which I think it more directly influenced Speed than even Die Hard, is that sort of cross-cultural melting pot of the passengers on the train. And yes, some of them are a little sort of like, checking a box at central casting or whatever, but like, it really is one of the few genuine public spaces where you will encounter people of all races, sexes, creeds, sexuality, class. You know, you will be on the train with like a Wall Street guy who makes, you know, $1 million a year and like a welfare mom and her 2 kids, and they'll be right next to each other. And that is just the train. And what I love so much about the Pelham 123 movies, aside from all of the cool crime stuff, etc., is just that how beautifully and adroitly it catches that flavor of living in really a big city, but specifically this big city.
Yeah, that's absolutely dead on, and it is a great way to sort of use a kind of a microcosm.
Yes.
You know, it's a perfect microcosm to explore sort of socio-politics or socio-economics in a kind of crime hostage thriller story. So it's uniquely positioned to do that. I mean, Inside Man, I think this has a lot of similarities with
Totally.
So something kind of similar. I feel like they're kind of in conversation, or that was more a riff on Dog Day Afternoon, as we talked about. But definitely, Liam, do you have any? I have my own thoughts, so I can suggest some things if you need food for thought. But
I mean, I think the subway as great equalizer in society is dead on. I also think that like this movie is especially so in watching the original, the 74, it's kind of about how different types of people respond to the same event. How does the mayor respond to it, right? How does Mathau's team respond to it? How do the police respond to it? And kind of like the bureaucracy that has to meet the moment, right? And I think the remake is more about how a city chews you up and spits you out, right? Because like one of the things we joked, I think, before we hit record is that if you look at the cast list for the original, 90% of the actors in that movie are shockingly from Brooklyn by way of Ukraine,
right.
Manhattan by way of Poland, or the Bronx by way of like, I mean, name your Eastern European. It's just so, you know, Greece, right?
Yeah.
It's so my favorite thing in the world, white ethnic in that sense. And I bring that up only to say that like it has this feeling of sort of the one character who's the stranger in a strange land is Robert Shaw. And I love the decision to make him a disgruntled mercenary, right?
Yeah, he has like one line of backstory and you totally understand his character.
Everything because Robert Shaw's a genius, you know?
He is.
And I think, you know, I struggle a little bit with some of the backstories in Tony Scott's version. But I do think what's really interesting is that it's a movie post 9/11 about a city that is essentially under, we've talked about this. We talked about this with The Siege, crazy amounts of surveillance. And everyone in this movie has been chewed up and spit out by New York City. Denzel can't afford childcare or college tuition. Travolta, you know, he's totally obnoxious, and then you realize he works in finance, so that's why he is that way, though I have a theory about that. And then one thing I love about both movies is both mayors don't want to be mayors anymore.
Yep.
They're like, get me the fuck out of here.
The mayor in the first one as well is like very inept. And weak and kind of toothless, and apparently that was based on the real guy at the time, right?
Abe Beam was the mayor of New York when the movie was made, and it's weirdly like
almost scathing.
Yeah, it's weirdly sort of like partly Abe Beam, but also somehow partly Ed Koch, who wouldn't be elected for 3 more years. Like I had to check. It just speaks to a type
because he has Ed Koch vibes. But then you realize the kinds of guys who get elected in the Democratic Party in the 70s are Ed Koch.
They're all that guy.
That was the scene in the original movie that made me really love it beyond the fact that it was just such a rip-roaring, kick-ass, cool crime movie, was the scene where the mayor is sort of sniveling in bed with a cold and his deputy comes in and absolutely owns him. And is like, here's what's really going on.
Who's in Annie Hall? What's his name?
Tony Roberts.
Tony Roberts. So good.
Actor.
Always good.
So great. That was the scene where I was like, I absolutely love this. This put it over the top
Phil,
for me.
This, and I know, Jason, you understand this too, but I'm pointing at Phil as the screenwriter of this. The decision to give him a cold in that original movie is like almost like you're watching a play They make this decision like that is so inhibits him to his house. He can't move in the world. Like, it's such a genius kind of like snapshot of a day in people's life. Whereas I feel like that kind of gesture in a newer movie, not to say that what they do with Gandolfini as essentially, playing essentially Bloomberg,
playing Bloomberg with like a couple of teaspoons of Rudy in there.
Ethnic Bloomberg.
Yeah.
And like he like the decision to kind of put him in this position is so like it says a lot about the character. It sort of like helps to hyper focus the story because like the mayor can't be in that involved, right? Like it's one of those push pull things with, is the mayor too involved in the '09 version? And I'm not saying he is, but there's this like dramatic choice to make the mayor sick. That like
it's genius
so
because you don't. I think you for a couple of reasons. One, I think you typically think like a politician in this situation is going to kind of come in with a bit of a kind of like for lack of a better term, bit of a dick swinging energy, and this completely emasculates him. He comes across as kind of pathetic and disempowered, and you realize no, actually there isn't some all powerful Oz pulling the levers of the city. It's inept humans like this guy, and then the real kind of like the real political animals are like the deputy,
the Tony Roberts character,
who kind of are the ones that, to use the kind of perfect analogy of like keep the trains running on time.
Right.
It's those type of people that actually get it done, and the mayor of New York is more of a figurehead. But what it also does to answer your question from the screenwriting standpoint that is genius is the cold is the payoff of the movie. So to set up the idea that people have that there's like maybe colds going around, which makes sense, especially people in close proximity.
Chekhov's stuffy nose.
Exactly. It pays off at the end. Pays off at the
Which
end
is a
of the
Chekhov
movie.
story. The sneeze. That's hilarious. Yeah,
But it's
totally.
also kind of relatable. So you don't actually hate this mayor. You just sort of like pity him because we've all had a cold. In fact, one of us has one right now.
I'm okay.
Poor Liam. But you're
my love of cinema is
unlike the
getting me
mayor of New
through.
York and taking a Pelham 123. You're digging it out.
I almost sent my deputy to record this one.
But what I wanted to ask about this, the question that interested me the most, and you've teed it up beautifully with two your threads here. What occurred to me on the viewing of looking at both movies was that it was about the relationship between citizen and city. I'm fascinated with this idea of like the relationship with the citizen and the state, but more specifically in this situation because New York almost feels like its own planet. Effectively,
it's kind of
like
a city-state, frankly.
Exactly. And I've been, funnily enough, I've been reading a lot about Rome at the moment, which is sort of like another kind of
Are there any parallels to what you're
But you know what I mean? Like it's big on the relationship of city and citizen, and that kind of complexity of it, where there's like there's that amazing scene which I love, that really is like one of the few poetic flourishes in the Scott version, where they take the helicopter flight, full on Philly special, and Turturro goes like.
It's a great line.
The view where he says, you kind of, it's nice seeing it from this perspective, right? It reminds you what you're fighting for.
Yeah.
Which sort of shows that there is
8 years after 9/11.
For all the cynicism, for all the cynicism that I think New Yorkers have about their city, there's also a strong sense of like pride in the way that the Romans as well are very much like, we are Romans. They still feel a sense of pride about the empire of the past. And so I think there's kind of an interesting parallel here. So and there was another amazing line in the original that spoke to this in that scene with Tony Roberts, where he says, "We're not running a democracy, we're running a city."
Yeah.
I mean, like, that is just what a diamond.
There are real
so
Julius Caesar vibes to this, right? Like, it really does have that kind of like, because you sort of go up the chain, right? Like, the first thing you sort of see is like a city cop gets shot, right? And then it moves up to the actual transit police, and then it moves up to the mayor's office, right? And it keeps building and building and building to this like larger mosaic. And it's really unusual every one of these movies has the scene in the control room where it's like, what are we gonna do? But this one really leans into like sort of what are the politics of this exactly? And can you pay ransom? I love in these movies when they're like, we don't have $1 million, because I think this is something we're thinking about as citizens now. Like we've all placed our faith in these institutions, for better or for worse, to like kind of balance the budget and do things correctly. And what happens when you're presented with this situation, when suddenly you have to like save 17 lives, 17 voters, right? Like, it's just, it keeps doubling down on its own sort of complexity around the city.
Is the city going to go to bat for you when push comes to shove? I think is a very interesting question that the original touches on more. And what I love about that, when I first saw the 2009 version, and obviously it is in the original too, usually with these hostage movies, it's always like they take hostages and then they ask for like a bus or helicopters on the roof to extract the hostages. They always have these demands that they're never really going to get.
Sure.
And it's all just to get strung along by the negotiator and goes, well, it's going to take some time. And you don't have time. I'm going to execute a hostage if you don't. But they're always like that. In this one, they're like, fuck, this is really bad. Give them money. And you almost never see that.
Right.
And that was one of the things where I was like, wow, that is really unique in a story of this kind. And it does paint an interesting question of how much does the city give a shit about the citizens when push comes to shove. I think that's what these films kind of are exploring. And maybe it's out of just political pragmatism and reality to be like, this will look bad if we don't do this. And as you said, like 17 voters, right? But I find that idea of like taking this microcosm, like you said, of where you get a total cross-section of all people from all backgrounds in society, put them in this tin can, miles beneath the city, and put them in a pressure cooker. And then as a way to explore a wider idea of citizen v state or government versus citizen, I think is like what makes these films fascinating beyond being each being amazing action thrillers in their own right.
And also the distinct nature of being the mayor of New York City. I mean, the mayor of New York City is the most famous politician outside of presidents in the entire world, right? Like, you're not like, because there's something like, living in LA, like, yeah, there's a mayor, but I wasn't like, on a day-to-day basis, actively thinking about our Karen Bass. I wasn't actively thinking about Mayor Karen Bass when I lived in LA, right? In Seattle, I am because part of my job, but also like there was just a big mayoral election here that kind of mirrors what happened in New York. But like when you're in New York, like I used to see what's his name? The guy after Bloomberg. How am I not remembering? De Blasio having coffee. Yeah. And like working out near the gym in my house. And I want to go over and be like, will you fucking do your job? Like, why are you at the Y right now? Go,
He was there so much.
He was there so much. And there was a whole scandal about, him leaving vehicles parked outside. But like you almost have like the mayor's ear in New York. Because it's just kind of like he's on the subway, they're living their life, they're doing their thing. And like it feels like a much more direct, whether it is or not, and it probably isn't, there's like a real direct relationship to the mayor of New York City that people feel when they live there, which feels different to me than anywhere else.
Yeah, like I say, it has no bearing on my like day-to-day life as it seems. Here in LA. Obviously, I knew, I did know it's Karen Bass. I know it was like a Garcetti and everything before that. Yeah. But it really, it's not. I don't follow it because it's sort of meaningless because we're all disconnected and spread out and sprawled out.
It's the connection. It's the nature of the city.
Yeah, you're in this kind of like you're in a box. You're in this to go back to the thing that we talk about a lot.
And I think that's one of the ways in which, I think they kind of had to make him a Bloomberg-like figure because Bloomberg was so associated with the subway. Like the thing of him taking the subway to work, that was like sort of famously one of the things that Bloomberg did. Like there are specific elements to that character, like the dollar salary as well and so forth. But then, when the reporters start badgering him about his divorce, that's Giuliani all the way. So you see where there's a mixture there.
Yeah, whatever happened to Giuliani? Just kidding. So it's like, and I think like another thing that the movie kind of plays with is there's this really, and I'm sure we'll get into Denzel, but I find the ending of this movie really fascinating, where he's like, you did something for New York City, now New York City's going to do something for you. And there's one interpretation of that that's like, oh, they're just going to wipe out his charges. He's going to be fine, right? He's whatever. But you're also like, I don't know. Like there's something about the like bureaucratic machinations of a city like New York City where it's like, it's kind of that like, is this guy going to wake up tomorrow and like he's going to be a hero, or is he going to like how long until everyone turns on him, right? Like how long till the
the milkshake ducking of Walter Garber, yeah,
exactly. Like what is the long term kind of it's interesting how it ends, because it ends with this kind of like he goes home and he brings the milk home, and it's like,
well, let's talk about it. We're pivoting into it. Let's get into our hero section and talk about Denzel Washington as Walter Garber. You can continue your thought under that umbrella.
I'm just sort of curious what the next day looks like for this guy, but I mean, as for performance, like this is low key one of Denzel's lowest key performances. Like it's so funny to think, because we've covered him quite a bit on this show. We've done The Siege, we've done
Crimson Tide, Ricochet,
Deja Vu.
Deja Vu, Inside Man.
And it's like, he's and like, God, we really have been a lot of Denzel.
He's kind of an all-star here.
I think he might be the most.
Too.
Yeah. What'd you say?
Unstoppable will be next.
Yeah. Oh God. But yeah, he's just like, it's such a believable. This is one of those roles where you're like, oh, this guy is better looking than this, skinnier than this. And like he occupies kind of the like working class man, like perfect. It's a perfect. He's perfect in this movie. Like it would be. It's almost a cliche at this point. You're like, this guy's the greatest working actor,
right?
Maybe the greatest actor of all time. He's unbelievable.
He's in this pocket. He's always been so good. He's like, I've never seen a bad Denzel performance, but he hit a pocket around 2000, I would say, where it's this sort of sweet spot that I want to say like Robert Duvall hit, Gene Hackman hit around that same age, where they've worked so much. They've been on cameras for so much of their life by that point that they really can do nothing and you're riveted. Like they can just exist on screen. Yeah. They can be as low key as they want to be, and you are 100% with them. Like you believe every word that comes out of his mouth.
It shouldn't work dramatically. This version shouldn't work, and it came as opposed to the more like he's not a law enforcement official or officer in any way. Like the original is a transit.
It's a great
cop.
change.
He's a transit cop,
he's sort of somewhat disempowered. He's stuck at a desk. These are all things that are like anti-dramatic. He's not got no investigative authority, and in fact he's totally back-footed because he's facing a corruption inquiry himself. None of this should really be that cinematic, yet in the hands of an actor that, as you said, who's that riveting, even if he doesn't do anything, it's actually his calmness in this situation that is his superpower, and that's why the other character, I think it's Ramon Rodriguez, is like, you're fucking good, Garber. The way he deals with this manic like hijacker and is able to just calmly kind of work through the problem is what makes him kind of weirdly mesmerizing.
It's funny because in Inside Man he plays this like kind of he's kind of back-footed in that movie, right? But he also plays
in a similar way,
in like the hippest guy imaginable.
Yeah, right.
And like just like he's kind of a cool dude, and just like down to the tact that like the first thing he says to Travolta on this is like, I understand. Like he just immediately, it's like such a thoughtful, I mean, that's in the script, but it's, you instantly buy this guy as like knowing how to solve a problem and stay engaged.
I will ask this of you guys. The big change that I am still not on board with is, and not even or more philosophically maybe than the execution, because like we say, it's Denzel, you buy everything that happens to him, you want the best for him. The redemption arc for him feels to me like a studio note. It feels kind of tacked on and kind of phony, and like, like it was just like they had to give that, like that's, I don't know, it feels arbitrary to me. And when you put him walking home with the milk up against Walter Matthau leaning in that door and saying Gesundheit, like there's no comparison for the two endings of this movie. I don't know.
Well, it is one of the themes that we didn't discuss, was there is a sort of low-key Catholic guilt, original sin, redemption, all of us sinners idea in the film, actually.
Not relatable at all.
Which I think is kind of a cool bit of flavor, but I don't disagree that the ending isn't. I actually have thoughts about that whole thing with the milk. I actually think it's brilliant writing, which I'll talk about later. But I do, obviously that's such an iconic ending. You cannot beat that ending, and maybe they were wise to just be like, we're not going to
try to ape it,
because it was so iconic,
right?
And such,
when you'd be watching it going like,
tone,
I know what's going to happen. It
sort
just
of
doesn't
snarky New York wise ass, sardonic, and it's Mattau's face. You can't it's something
Bulldog
unique about
face.
that.
Yeah.
You know, his expression.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I think a lot of it as well was changed from, he was going to be a cop, and Denzel was just like, I play too many cops and feds, and so they changed him to more an MTA guy. Sorry, Liam, you were going to chime in.
No, I think that's all really good context. I wonder if a little bit of this is a result of, and I'm guessing here, so movie going culture in the 70s versus movies in the
totally.
2000s. Because
totally.
I think when you're going to the movies in the 70s, you're inhaling a steady diet of a variety of different things, including like the Melville thing is the comparison I made, but it's like some of those films that were made in the 50s and 60s, you're not seeing in the United States so much. Like it was in the air. These kind of like, you know, obviously we can talk about the cinema of the American 70s cinema and how it is much more ambiguous and there's much more space for that kind of stuff. Whereas I do think that like once you get to the 2000s, there is a stronger need for a backstory and a why and to understand, you know.
Sure.
One of my complaints about the 2009 is that it spends too much time on backstory. Now, I don't think I think that probably that feeling only exists because of my feelings about the originals. Just like we're in the middle of this story when the movie begins, but I think like you know, it's a tendency to be like we have to really clarify this for people now. And I guess maybe this is a good time to start to talk about Travolta. I think the Travolta backstory is like fascinating. And I think the sort of like stock market of it all is really, really smart. And I think that this is, in addition to being a 9/11 movie, is a great post-08
economic crash
movie.
economic
crisis
it's
movie.
based on a real guy. His backstory is based on a real person that did the hijacking, but was a disgruntled, actually worked in the stock market, but for the city, which I found really interesting. Would like gamble with money that would go to the city. So specifically had this feeling of that, and then had a plea bargain, got screwed, and went to jail. And they based this character on this real guy. And Tony is very into that stuff. He always finds a role model for the cast based from real life. Yeah. So let's talk about John Travolta as Ryder. I'm sure you've got takes. Who wants to go first?
I have one of the things that I have softened up a little bit, come around a bit on, is this performance, which on the first time I saw it, I disliked intensely. And I maintain that part of the problem with the performance is he's playing such a nasty asshole. And there is that element, which we have talked about in relation to Die Hard, but I also think holds with Mr. Blue, with Shaw, whereas although he's ruthless and cold-blooded, he's still someone you enjoy watching. And you don't actually like spending time with Travolta through most of this movie, through at least a good
100% agree.
Now, I think when him and Denzel get in the room together, that's when the performance, I feel like he has to tone it down when you're acting opposite the most naturalistic actor on the planet. And as a result, what he's doing in that scene, I think there's some really good stuff. Now, I was complaining to a friend of mine about this performance and about how obnoxious he is, but also that he's so obnoxious that I almost don't buy that he's smart enough to put this together. And we were talking about it before I had rewatched the movie, and I had forgotten the Wall Street angle. She said, yeah, but he's a Wall Street guy. And like, this is a friend who was like an attractive woman, you know, in New York in her 20s. She was in the company of Wall Street guys just like this. And she's like, no, he could be that smart and exactly that obnoxious and over the top and annoying. And the more she talked about guys like this, the more the performance sort of snapped into place for me. I still think he's sort of unpleasant to be around for too much of the movie before you know that about him. But I have pulled back a little bit on my
They make a choice, don't they? The difference of what's interesting, you make, we talked about this, of like, if the villain is unpleasant company, these films can be unpleasant company, whereas what they do with the Shaw character is just enigmatic.
Yes.
And therefore is
that works.
Fascinating.
And it's Robert
He's
Shaw.
not enigmatic.
And it's Robert Shaw, yes.
Yeah.
You kind of know this guy is like an aggressive arsehole. But I think what he's also, there's an element of the character having a performative quality, because he needs to be seen as a real psychopath who is unstable, to offset, to get, so that it's hard to negotiate with, and they just have to agree to his demands, because he doesn't actually give a shit about the 10 million. His plan is crash the market and take the real money and invest that on the market and short the stock. That's his real master plan. In order to do that, he has to panic the city. To think, this guy is so crazy and unmanageable. You can't negotiate with someone that is this manic. So I think there's some, but he's also using his own rage and sense of disgruntlement, because he has been screwed and gone to prison and the city betrayed him in the plea bargain, that he's able to access that anger. So I actually would argue it's quite sophisticated. I think it's totally right. Superficial, you look at it and you go, oh, it's Travolta being over the top. But actually, there's a lot more going on there. That I think is very interesting. And it's so interesting that Travolta, and another thing that's come up through this show, the huge movie star that was always so much more interesting playing villains and bad guys than he was playing heroes. You know, no one talks about Phenomenon. But we're still talking about Face Off. We're still talking about Pulp Fiction. We're still talking about Get Shorty and Chili Palmer and you know, his crazy performances when he's a bad guy. And actually, after this might be his last great big screen performance, I think, because after this, there's like From Paris with Love, which I think is a fun kind of B-movie programmer, and Savages, where I think he has a very good part in an ensemble. He's also kind of a psycho
Is that the
DEA
Oliver
agent.
Stone?
That's the Oliver Stone
the
one.
kind of strange Oliver Stone sort of drug movie.
Right.
And then it just drops off a cliff in terms of the quality of his filmography.
And then he goes into the geezer teaser phase, basically.
Yeah.
The sort of the low rent straight to VOD, which is where he's kind of at now.
Yeah.
He's gonna have like one more.
I hope so, because
I
love
hope
him.
so too. I love him
him.
too. You know.
Yeah.
But
I think it's a really entertaining performance, and you do kind of need the yin and yang of Denzel being so cool and calm. You have to have the opposite.
that is true.
To make the contrast interesting to watch, because it's essentially a static film.
Right.
You guys have kind of said everything that I want to say. One, this is like almost experimental in how annoying it is. And then secondly, that I often wonder...
Leo Getz-ish, almost.
Yeah, exactly. Or like DiCaprio in Wolf of Wall Street at his most annoying. This kind of, like, you know.
That's a good comp. Yeah.
But the other
that
thought I
level of,
had...
like, intense, aggressive charisma and unpleasantness.
Is like, I was thinking about, you know, this is, I think, our third Travolta villain movie, you know, Broken Arrow, Face Off, and this. And I like, you know, the scene in Face Off, when he's talking to the daughter, and he's like, write that one down. You should watch it. It's the best movie ever. But he has the scene where he's like, you know, dressed like Halloween and ghouls will try to get in your pants, and he's like so suave but like slimy. I have a theory that that's who that guy is, and this entire thing is a performance. Like, I really think that, like, because you're right, Phil, he has to go on and be like he has to be like insane, because other, like, you know, the circumstances of this are unusual,
right?
In the sense that, like, you know, you made the point earlier about the subway as the great equalizer. If Nakatomi Plaza goes the other way, it's kind of like, a bunch of rich, you know, executive class people died in a tower. Like, it's terrible, right? 17 New Yorkers, including like a mom with her kids, get killed on the subway.
Right.
That is like a massive tragedy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think Gruber can kind of be like, he's dealing with suave, sophisticated kind of.
Sure.
He's dealing with Takagi, right? And I think that, like, that element of it is underrated. That sort of aspect of it, where it's like Travolta kind of has to be fucking nuts because the city has to pay him. Yeah. Because he's actually running a blind, right? And doing something else. And it's like, it really makes me wonder, because, like, I don't know, I just don't fully buy the, if this is who he is, I don't fully buy the, like, the chin strap, like facial
that's who he's
hair.
become in prison.
Yeah, that's
though.
post-prison shit.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a guy who's had to
Gone through some shit.
be a survivor and change and adapt.
Totally.
So he's kept some of that residue.
But it's a really
been retained.
enigmatic performance if you think about like who was this guy before.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's really cool actually. And obviously it's apples and oranges trying to I don't think it's almost fair in some ways to compare, Matthau and Shaw to Denzel and Travolta.
They're doing different
all
things.
Awesome, and they're just doing
too,
different things. They're riffing on they're taking a really cool, what New York was in 1974 or whatever, whenever that movie, the first movie comes out, is a very different beast to what it is post 9/11, 2009. And they're both using this story as a way to explore the city, how it's changed, and how all of these things intersect.
Really quickly, one of the things that's so interesting is that, like, when you saw previews for this movie and you see the command center, you're like, that's such a Hollywood thing. Like, of course, Tony Scott has the sexiest command center in his movie imaginable. And then you do a little research and he's like, no, that's exactly what it looks like. It's an airplane hangar. Yeah, because it has to be.
Yeah.
And, no one knows exactly where it is.
It's like
one of the fascinating
silence as
details.
well. It's like everyone is whisper quiet in there. It's super professional. It's like NASA.
Yeah, and like you're kind of like, where, because it's in Manhattan, like, because I think in Pelham, it's in Brooklyn, right? They moved it to Manhattan after, like, later on, but it's like, where would this be? Like, it's a really fascinating thing. And like, he really replicates reality in the way he builds that space up and makes it be the way that it would be.
And one thing I wanted to say on this is like his knowledge of that. This was the stepping stone he needed to step on in order to make his final masterpiece of Unstoppable, which is also about the intricate fabric of the railroad system, which he clearly became fascinated by because of his research on this movie. But in the interest of time, I want to kind of move through our last two tenets relatively quickly. Because as you pointed out, Jason, there's really only one action beat. The action section. There's really only.
Howdy, did Tony Scott direct
the money run sequence. Tony's like, let me just slide the gears into God mode. It's just like. Then when that music kicks in and it's like a map of New York, I'm like, oh gosh, we're going there.
Tony's gonna cook. Here we go.
Cook.
Yeah.
That sequence, and it's like a Dodge Charger that's souped up and everything, and it's the
and
music
the ending. The ending is incredibly well staged.
The ending is awesome.
It's not. It's there's not as much motion happening in that sequence, but it is, and that is also the fun. Like the fact that it is the third act. Complete departure, like completely different between the two films, but it is fun to imagine Walter Matthau like running down the bridge with a gun in his hand. Like I do enjoy that visual a little bit,
because the ending of how the Robert Shaw character becomes undone is pretty iconic and bold, and again, so it's like we're just not going to compete with that. We're going to do our own thing, which
but accomplish the same thing, which was cool.
Did either of you think of when they're shooting the two guys, like, and they don't shoot them 3 times, they shoot them 45 times each? It makes me think of the scene in Ronin when he's like, 2 shooters across from each other. They shoot each other. These cops are just unloading clips.
Again, the incompetence of the NYPD.
Shots.
It's
incredible. You're like, how did you not shoot each other? It's so funny.
Yeah.
The last section then is the humor section, and it is a very funny film. Both versions, but we'll talk about the 2009 version. One of the things, and I do want to just talk about this briefly, Jason, especially as we have you here, because there is a lot of acerbic humor in it. But I will say that I think Gandolfini's performance in this is actual genius, because you are taking this character that you should hate, right? He is a New York politician, right? Ergo, he's a see you next Tuesday just by default. In that era, I think most people kind of assume, like, there's a certain type of New York politician. Instantly, you're sort of like inclined to dislike them, especially if he is a 1%er who comes from, as he's kind of set up to be. That's why he understands the financial aspect of it. He has had an extramarital affair that is public knowledge, right? He is totally disingenuous. You a Yankee fan? No. I mean, yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah. Of course.
Great moment.
Everything about him on paper is like, we should hate this character, and because Gandolfini's a genius, you kind of love him. He's like lovable even though his actions, I don't know how he did it. So
I mean, there's a book about it. It's called Gandolfini, and it was written.
I have it right here. Maybe the book can elucidate.
I mean, I do think that a lot of that really by that point, by 2009, that's 10 years after The Sopranos premieres. I think a lot of it is just the goodwill that we have towards Gandolfini, the relationship that we had with that character, who was also in most demonstrable ways loathsome.
A monster.
But,
yeah.
Yes.
But you love him. Yeah.
But we love him. And a lot of that, honestly, is Gandolfini's personal charm, his sort of kind of cuddliness, which you don't really expect, and his sensitivity, the sort of vulnerability that he brings to all of his best work.
But he had like 90 hours to do that in Sopranos, right? Everything you say is totally right. But like to do it this quickly with this little screen time, I think shows you how skilled and unique and brilliant he was.
Absolutely.
I also think you're watching the movie being aware of James Gandolfini too.
Totally.
So it's like you kind of walk in with the Tony is a teddy bear baggage, if that makes sense,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
and like it's worth noting, you know, and reminding from your book is that like he's a sex symbol. People find him really hot. He's really attractive. I mean, you know, it's funny because like the only part that he ever played where I fully could condemn him, despite his love of martinis in the film, is Killing Them Softly.
Right.
Like when that guy orders
True
three
Romance.
in
True
True
Romance
Romance,
is
but also the smile on his face in True Romance.
Yeah.
You know, with his little gap teeth in the front. Like there's something. I mean, he's a psycho, but like he's cool, right? But like Killing Them Softly, you're like, this guy. I mean, that's a sad portrait of a sad, broken person. Like,
that
personally, that shit hit me hard for a variety of familial reasons. And I think he's just like, but like, even in this, you're like, I love this guy. I fucking love this guy.
The thing that I do think is it's not directly related to what we're talking about, but that I always think is worth noting. What's fascinating about this performance in his career is almost everybody he's in this movie with is someone he had a long, fruitful collaboration through several projects with.
Yeah.
This is his fourth movie with Tony Scott. And Tony, like, if any, like,
loved him.
Yeah. I mean, as you guys mentioned, I was so thrilled when you did on the last Boy Scout episode. That's the first time he's in a movie.
In a tiny part.
In an
barely
unbilled,
recognizable.
Unbilled, no lines, just a henchman pointing a gun at Bruce Willis and trying to throw Damon Wayans over an overpass. That's his first thing. Then because he does that, Tony casts him in True Romance, which is very literally the movie that makes him
And he kind of walks
actor.
away with that movie,
and he
which is
steals
crazy
it
to
in
say.
like 3 scenes. And then Tony puts him again in Crimson Tide. That's then the first time he does a movie with Denzel, who he then goes on to do Fallen with. And then right after he does Crimson Tide, he does Get Shorty, which is the first of 4 movies with John Travolta. Because he's in, so he has these. Okay, God, now I got to remember what they were. It's Get Shorty, She's So Lovely, this, and then a pretty good movie about the Lonely Hearts Killers or the honeymoon killers called Lonely Hearts, which like nobody has seen, but is a very good small period crime movie. So.
Interesting. Wow.
All these people who he's done, and then on top of all of that, he's doing scenes with John Turturro, and this is the only time he's on the screen with Turturro. But Turturro directed one of my favorite Gandolfini film performances, Romance and Cigarettes, a wonderful, weird sort of Pennies from Heaven style musical. And then
I love that movie. I forgot about that movie.
It's really good. And then. After Jim died, having shot only the pilot of the show that became The Night Of, Turturro took over the role that Jim was going to play in that series. So they and sort of did that like with the permission of his widow and that sort of thing, so out of a place of respect for Jim and wanting to sort of finish the project. So he's surrounded by basically family through the whole through this whole thing. These are all people he's done a lot of work with, and I think that's partially why he seems so kind of at ease in this role.
And he's such this is also speaking to that like beautiful New York guy thing, like these New York actors that don't lose that. They're like it like makes me a little emotional because I love that stupid goddamn city so much. And like that
we'll talk about it when we get to the Oscars for sure.
Sorry. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention too, I almost forgot to mention, is Michael Rispoli, who plays his boss.
Right. Was Jackie.
Was Jackie Sr. but was one of the 3 actors who was up for the role of Tony Soprano. It was between him, Jim, and Stevie Van Zandt. Were sort of the 3 finalists. I think
they picked the right guy. With no disrespect to any of those.
No disrespect to either of those gentlemen.
Yeah.
I think just the last thing on the humor section, and we'll talk more about some of these guys in the Oscars in a moment, but I do want to give a shout out to the insecure girlfriend who tries to get Gio to tell her that she loves him in the middle of a hostage situation.
Yes.
Dude.
Yes.
Like, it would be so much easier to just say that you love me.
Dick of the
than to be
movie,
like,
man. Sorry, dick of the movie.
Yes.
let's move into the Oscars because we are approaching our deadline.
Yes.
It's fine.
The Die Hard Oscars,
5
aka
minutes.
the Action
Check.
Movie Awards.
Check me.
Check.
The John McClane Yippee-Ki-Yay Award for Best Line. I've picked 3.
Okay.
Life is simple now. You just have to do what I say. That's what I say to Liam at the start of every recording. That's Travolta.
It works. I say, tell me you love me before we start.
JK.
I'm not.
You either go with the current or you fight it. We all end up at the same place. Oh yeah, where's that? Jersey? Yeah, you watch it. I was born there, man. I thought that was like a great exchange, particularly because Travolta is actually from New Jersey. So I thought that was like a
no
cool,
shit. He like
cool
exudes it out of his pores that he's from
Yes.
New Jersey.
But the last line in the one that I is my personal choice. Not it's not the line itself, but it's the skill of the writing. Is the scene with Teresa, Garber's wife, when she says, like, now you do what you need to do, but we need milk. So on your way home, I want you to bring a gallon. When I've done, I mentioned this in a previous episode, and occasionally I've been asked to teach a screenwriting class at Bristol Old Vic and places like that. And I've used this scene. Just said, this is an amazing example of right around what the scene is really about. At no point does she say, I'm terrified, I love you, I don't want to lose you, any of that on the nose stuff. Instead, it's an adjunct that is very relatable, and the conversation becomes about milk, but it's really about, I'm really, really frightened. That is brilliant writing. So for me, that is my personal pick. Did you guys have a choice of
I mean,
either from those or another line that you love?
We're not going to throw in "he can lick my bunghole, motherfucker." We're not going to.
Well, I think that was just the
Someone
de
had to say
facto
it.
winner.
Oh, okay, good.
I can't not be me, but the scene when he says to the driver, goes, "Where are you from? Brooklyn. You Irish?" Thought so. Like it's just like
That did it for you.
Yeah. Well, it's also just it kind of
he's a lovely
speaks to
actor
his
as
like
well.
weird obsession with Catholic guilt and this kind of thing that's going on with this character. I just love it. And Italians and Irish in New York, they have a thing. You know, it's a thing.
They do. Actually, my pick is the one that you mentioned earlier with Turturro and the chopper. It's nice to see it from this perspective. You can see what you're fighting for. It's a really good line.
Love that moment.
And Turturro is a good enough actor to deliver it without it being like trickly.
Dude, that
and
guy's
saccharine.
the fucking best, man.
He's so good.
So good. Well, he's coming up in the next category, which is the Hans Gruber Exceptional Thief Award for stealing the film. The nominees are James Gandolfini as the Mayor of New York, John Turturro as Lieutenant Vincent Caminetti, Luis Guzman as Ramos, and an actor that I love and particularly love in this performance is John Benjamin Hickey as the Deputy Mayor LaSalle, who is the same character, has the same name as the character played brilliantly by Tony Roberts in the original, who's like the real kind of like gets it done a politician who is actually running things. I love his performance in the movie. So those would be my my 4.
I'm afraid I'm afraid I have to go with the actor I wrote the book about. I do think this is just for all the reasons that we've already gotten into, a wonderful Gandolfini performance. While respecting the fact that they do have like a nice deep bench of great New York character actors, as a Pelham 123 remake should. I can't believe we talked about the original without talking about either Jerry Stiller or Doris Roberts.
Stiller is so cool. I love that he calls him Z.
Yes.
You know, because his name's Zachary. Of course, the Walter character, even changing his name to Walter Garber
renamed
was a nod to Matto, right?
Which
was very cool.
Love
tasteful
that.
touch.
Yeah.
Liam,
Anyway,
who do you like for? I can't. I love Turturro. I love Turturro in this.
Yeah.
And I love all of those guys.
Yeah, they're all good.
But yeah, I think Gandolfini for the aforementioned reasons would be my pick. How about you, Liam?
That's a tough one. You guys have mentioned the great one, so I have to give a shout out to a character who has about 3 lines in this movie, the actor Frank Wood.
Love him.
So Frank Wood was in the best piece of theater I've ever seen in my entire life.
Really?
I saw Frank Wood in a production of Three Sisters, the Chekhov play. That was 3.5 hours long. It was an intentionally like incredible. Like, so the final act when they're leaving was like this long. It was so long and so like it was from a Polish director, and it was so good, and it was again 3.5 hours long that I went back and saw it the next night. I was like, I cannot believe how good this is, and he was amazing in it. And ever since then, whenever I see Frank Wood in anything, I'm like, because those are who those actors are. They're like, they have 3 lines in Michael Keaton, or they are in She Said for 2 minutes. And then if you're a theater person, you're like, I've seen this actor like give the best performance I've ever seen.
Because they can go do it like on a day, and then they'll still make their 6 o'clock call. Yeah, I love that.
I think Frank Wood is a genius, and he's been in some movies. He's a little bit, like I just love him, and I like watching his. I was like, oh, it's Frank Wood. He's in this.
Played for George Bundy in 13 Days. That's what I knew him from.
Yeah, totally.
And I loved him in that. And I think that's correct. And yes, I'm so glad you brought this up, because when he shows up, when that was when I started to love this movie the first time I saw it. When it was like him, John Benjamin Hickey, these like stage titans, or just like the guys who are like running the city, and you just totally believe it. They're so good and so effortless. And he plays the commissioner, and he
was on an episode of The Sopranos, which I didn't remember. He's in a lot of stuff, and he's just a wonderful actor. And
great choice.
He'll never get like the accolade that he deserves for it, but like just an astonishing.
He'll get it from Liam fucking Billy.
He will on this show. He will on this show. Those are the guys we love. I will say this.
I do it quickly. My one critique I do have of the remake, and I didn't realize it until that scene you were talking about when they're shooting down the other 2 guys in the street. That is one real flaw in this, is that the guys in the gang do not have personalities the way that they do in the original. And really, Guzman only does because it's Luis Guzman, and he just cannot not have a personality. But
you cast Luis Guzman to play Luis Guzman.
You do. You do. But, there was a really clear sense of who all 4 of those guys were and how different they were in the original. That is
bit of a missed opportunity,
lacking.
but maybe it was just a case of like, they didn't feel like they had enough real estate. But Hector Elizondo in the original is like a great character.
Oh my God.
What a piece of shit.
He's horrible.
Like the most not Hector Elizondo performance of his entire filmography. He's always the most likable guy in the supporting cast. And in this, you just want to like throw him under the truck.
From the minute he's on camera, you're like, that guy's the bad guy.
That guy sucks.
That guy's the problem. And I also love that they do that in that movie. It's like Shaw's bad, but he's not the worst guy.
Right, exactly.
I think that's
he has to regulate on him at the end.
Yeah, totally. He does.
The last one is we're not going to do best death because they're like kind of nasty deaths, and it will be a bit trivial to do that. But the Dick Thornburg Award for Dick of the Movie, I have 2 nominees. Certainly the girlfriend, which I hadn't listed, but I have Michael Rispoli as John Johnson, the head of the MTA, Garber's boss, and Daniel Stewart Sherman as the bullish ESU Lieutenant Staley, who's the guy whose pep talk is, just don't fuck it up.
I love that guy. I love
very
that
New
guy.
York.
So good.
Like I wouldn't have liked that. I'm too sensitive for that kind of guidance. I'm an arm around the shoulder guy in those situations.
Why is Rispoli's character named John Johnson? What? Like that guy's name should be like Pizza McPasta. Like, what are we talking about?
He
here?
has a giant painting of like him hunting like a deer or something in his office.
It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I'm John Johnson. No, you're not.
No, you're
you
not.
Changed your name. Like, it's a little bit like
he is an
Untouchables when he's like, "What was your name before you changed it?" Like,
what was it before you changed it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, Rispoli's the shoe in here, and he
totally
he does that with relish. He's
so believable
as
well. It's like that New York prick,
Yeah, and just the like bureaucratic asshole who can't deal with.
Absolutely.
Totally.
All right, guys. We're going to take one last quick break and then wrap things up with our final favorite section of the show, the Double Jeopardy trivia quiz, where the scores can really change. We'll be right back. And we're back with our final section of the show. It was fine. Let's move on. We're on a deadline. I will say it's very difficult to come up with trivia questions when one of your guests has written a book about one of the people.
I'm sorry. I'm very smart.
Inevitably, one of my one of them has come up. But we'll see if you were paying attention, Liam. Question number 1. This is the 3rd time that Denzel Washington and James Gandolfini have worked together.
Oops.
But what were the other 2 films in which they were among the cast?
Crimson Tide
is correct.
And I was not paying enough attention to remember.
Actually, this may not have come up, actually, now that I think of it. Do you know, Jason?
Fallen.
Fallen. Yeah, it did, but I'd forgotten. I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but I remember loving it. Gregory Hoblet. This is a pro Gregory Hoblet.
Eyes up. That was my clue.
He's good. He's real good.
He is.
Question number 2.
Primal Fear is fantastic.
It's really
Primal
good.
Fear is amazing. Taking of Pelham 123 cast members Louis Guzman and John Benjamin Hickey both appeared with Denzel Washington in which 1999 serial killer thriller also set in New York City.
The Bone Collector.
Damn!
Dang.
He's back.
Okay. All right.
He's back.
Some of us worked in a video store in the late 90s.
I did too, but I only saw that movie once, and I definitely didn't remember that
I don't think
Louis
I've ever seen it. I just remember
It's
the
not
Denzel
great.
Washington. Yeah,
I saw it once and was like, this is like fantastic. And then it ended and I was like, I hate this movie. Never went back.
Not a remembered movie at all.
No.
No one
pretty clearly
no one's going to be
memorable.
like, what Arrow needs to do
does the
is
thing
put that
of
out
like
on 4K.
This very recognizable actor is like in it for 2 seconds, and you're like, why is Leland Orser just like like an extra?
Right.
And then, you see where it goes.
Yeah.
The final one though, I think this is pretty good. All right.
Okay.
Convoluted corner. For In the 1998 version of Pelham 123, the role of Mr. Green, the hijacker who drives the train, is played by Richard Schiff. But in which iconic Die Hard on a Blank action movie does Richard Schiff also play an ill-fated subway driver?
Phone out. Call out.
Yeah,
We're calling out?
Call Garber.
The clue is the train that couldn't slow down.
He's in Speed?
He is the subway driver in Speed that Dennis Hopper shoots.
No.
Tapley is tearing his hair out, like listening to this.
Wow. Okay. All right.
So there you go. I thought that was kind of a nice way to tie things off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So how funny?
Okay. Yeah.
How funny.
That's awesome.
Richard Schiff and subway trains being hijacked. That's our next podcast.
There you go.
Sign up to the Patreon.
What are we calling it? Sift on a train?
Schiff on a train.
Shift on a train. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
www.patreon.com/shiffonatrain.
It's 2 episodes, but you're going to want to pay for them.
They're both going to be real good.
It's $100 an episode.
They're going to be really long episodes, guys.
Oh dear. Right. That does it for us. Jason, thank you for completing your hat trick. Any final words before we let you out of here?
Pelham 123 1974 is, just by sheer math, one of the most influential movies ever made. I will die on this hill. By sheer virtue of the fact that, number one, it's such a clear inspiration on Die Hard, which, as you've shown over the past couple of years,
3 years,
influenced countless films. But also, and we didn't get into this and we won't now because we're wrapping up, but direct influence on Reservoir Dogs.
For sure.
The color-coded nicknames specifically, which you'll note they took out of the remake because everyone would have thought they were ripping off Reservoir Dogs.
Absolutely.
But you do the math. The number of movies that were directly inspired by Die Hard and the number of movies that were directly inspired by Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction, which happened because of Reservoir Dogs, is that's a mind-boggling amount of 90s and 2000s cinema. They all are part of a tree and that root is firmly in 1974 with Pelham 123. So I'm glad. I was so pleased. I didn't even know you guys yet. I hadn't even guessed it when I started listening to the show and you were giving it its flowers in that first sort of origins of Die Hard episode. And so I'm glad that now towards the end of the run you've been able to circle back to really and truly one of the great American movies of the 1970s.
Yeah, here. It's kind of the OG of the whole thing. Actually,
it really is.
It
really is.
Of like a hostage taking Die Hard type scenario. Yep.
I think we would be remiss to not say how great it has been to have you on the show, to talk to you, to get to know you in the process of making the show. Because someone like you is sort of like why you make a podcast like this. And I definitely think as someone who'd read your work before and was a fan, when you initially were like, I love the show, I was like, it felt great. And it's like you're making the show. Awesome. There's a specific type of person you're making the show for. And it is definitely you as one of these. So it's really great. And we're very excited for Yippee-Ki-Yay. And
stay with us for our outro, Jason. You get to come behind the usually we kick the guests off, but
get the fuck
you can stay here for our outro. No, here I agree. It's been wonderful to have your support throughout this, and you've sent us some very, very kind messages, and you were very supportive of the Patreon 48 hours of buddy movies, which you are signed up to.
And soon we'll sign up for Schiff on a Train.
Schiff on a Train.
I'm there.
Spin-off is coming.
100%.
So just a reminder to everybody to please sign up for www.patreon.com/48 hours of buddy movies. That's 48, the numbers 48 hours of buddy movies for our other podcast, which you can listen to for the princely sum of just $4.99 a month. You get 2 episodes a month. And you can also join as a free member and get updates about what we may be doing next. TBC.
Could be exciting.
I want to. The next film that we'll be doing on that show is going to be Gridlocked. Speaking of street
Love
movies and kind of the post-Tarantino stuff, a really cool movie with Tupac and Tim Roth. And next time on this show is going to be Unstoppable, as I already mentioned. But I also wanted to say something, and I'll let Liam, you can kind of play us out here. But the last thing I wanted to say was we are putting the word on the street that we're looking for a special guest for our Dread episode, which is coming up in a few episodes' time. And we really want to find a special guest that is familiar with the 2000 AD comics.
Yeah.
Familiar with the lore, familiar with the mythos to really make that episode something special. So if you are someone with podcast experience and you are comfortable on the microphone and you know your shit about the Judge Dredd lore, then hit us up or at diehardoab@gmail.com and let us
we
know.
understand day-to-day dread, but this is a very specific type of dread.
2Ds and no A.
The 2D dread
Not if
is
you
one
just,
that...
not if you just feel dread, because our inbox would be flooded.
Yeah, so do we. What's next on that? Next on the show
is yet another Tony Scott joint starring Denzel Washington about trains. It is his final masterpiece, Unstoppable. So I'm gonna be quiet now. I'm gonna let Liam, you kind of bring us home, and if there's anything else you want to say.
Sorry, Michael Kilme. Guide for the Film Fanatic is my podcast. Liam was a guest last season, and Phil will be a guest this season. So tune in. It's on the One Heat Minute Productions podcast.
Wait, did you guys figure out what you're gonna do?
Not yet. We're
talked
hashing
about
it out.
some ideas.
Is Cobra on that in that book?
I'm afraid it came out right around the time the book came out, so I'm sure it
guy doesn't know what he's
missed the
talking
cut.
about.
We're doing Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man, right?
Right?
That's in there. That's in there.
Just stay tuned for Mickey Rooney on a Bike, our new podcast. Okay, Unstoppable. Look, we'll be back with one last Tony Scott masterpiece. Die Hard on a Blank is a podcast from Philip Gothorn and Liam Billingham. Tyson Hubley makes our art. You can hear exclusive episodes of our Patreon show at patreon.com/48 hours of buddy movies. Rate, review, subscribe, and tell your action movie loving friends about the show. See you next time on Die Hard on a Blank.